everybody, welcome back to Mountain Crawlers. As you can see, I have a 2001 Jeep Cherokee XJ behind me. We're going to be throwing a 3-link long arm kit on it. This is the same kit that 5 other Jeeps on my channel I think are running right now that you've seen in the past if you watch my videos. This kit's tried and true. It's by Iron Rock Off-Road. It's a 3-link. I mean, basically this kit just takes a beating and just keeps on giving. So let's get it thrown on this XJ here. Let's get it all unboxed. I'll show you all the components and we'll get started. Okay, so I have the kit lined up on the floor, kind of how it's going to be installed into the Jeep. So let's go over all the parts. Now this right here did not come with the kit, but I highly recommend installing this, especially when you do long arms. It's a flex joint that replaces the control arm bushing in the axle side on the diff side. This is a 3-link, so you won't be using that passenger side control arm mount anymore. But definitely would recommend a flex joint or a Johnny joint in there, simply because the OEM rubber style joints don't even last but a couple months. Ask me how I know. I have to replace mine every, 3 to 4 months. I ought to just get one of these, but I've been just using my warranty up. I will get one eventually. Anyhow, definitely recommend that with long arms. It flexes so much that it just tears the rubber. So this will definitely fix that. This is also the install tool that you can purchase separately to help install that. Typically I just use a ball joint press, but this customer bought that to provide with the kit. So that's cool of him. So you have your upper control arm here, lower hardware control arm mount for both the upper and lower on the driver's side, your flex joint for both sides, for both arms. The lower side takes a rubber bushing. And we come over here, beefy transmission mount. I run mine on rocks all the time. It holds up perfect. And then basically same thing, same story on this side. You also have a transfer case drop. If you don't have an SYE yet, we won't be putting these in though, because this customer does have an SYE. All right, got the Jeep up in the air. Let's see what we got ahead of us. So, as you can probably tell, I'm in the process of putting unibody stiffeners on this thing too. So the reason why I'm doing stiffeners is these unibodies and these XJs are very prone to flexing a ton and even cracking on hard off-roading. These basically turn it into a frame to help stiffen everything up so you don't risk breaking that thin sheet metal of the unibody rail. So I highly recommend, if you guys are going to be off-roading in harsh environments, you know, not just mall crawling every day, that when you do long arms on these, at least put some midsection unibody stiffeners on. You can get away with not having the front and rear right away, but that just gives the long arm Crossmember a nice chunk of meat to bolt to instead of that thin, really thin unibody rail. So I typically install the midsection first and then put the long arms on and then go with the other sections after that. So that's currently what's on my Jeep. This Jeep's getting the full set front to rear, but we're here for long arms right now, so that's what I'm going to show you. All right, so I'm going to support the transfer case up. So we have good support because this Crossmember is going away. There's 4 nuts in here. They're all 13 mil. I already have them out because I've been pulling this Crossmember on and off while I work on this thing to do the stiffeners. So your OEM bolts here are going to be different than what I have in here. One of them is going to be a stud, and to get it out it's pretty easy. You just have to double nut it and then loosen it that way. This one, however, was super rusted in. I ended up having to cut it off and drill it out, and it was still too messed up to re-tap. So I actually drilled a hole the size of a nut in there and welded it into the unirail, and now it's got a nice fastener. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get this off now and then get our other Crossmember bolted into place. Okay, so the old Crossmember was only 2 bolts, but because the long arms are going to be bolting to this Crossmember, Iron Rock has you add a 3rd extra bolt, 1 for each side. So here's your 2 OEM bolt holes, and there's a hole forward of them that is just an empty void. You're going to drill out to 23/64 and then tap to 7/16 by 14, and that'll just add a little extra security for your long arms so they don't go ripping off. So we'll get to drilling, and they're usually already at the size to tap it at, but you just basically want to clean out that hole. Alright, so now that we have both holes tapped on either side, I'm going to go ahead and slap some paint where we're going to bolt the Crossmember down on, and then we'll go ahead and assemble the flex joints while that paint dries, and then we'll proceed on to the next step. Okay, assembling Iron Rock's flex joints is pretty straightforward. What their instructions say to do is take this centering ball and apply a decent amount of grease to it, like so. Set that aside. And then here is your races to hold the ball in its position. Just take some grease, set it down, drop the joint on one side. Drop this in now. Grease this side. You're going to take these guys and line it up with the holes. Like so. Like I said, pretty dang straightforward. You just gotta hold your tongue right to get everything lined up. There we go. Okay. Slide that back on so I get it lined up. And get your bolt just loose and not even snug. Get the other side in, lined up, just loose also. Okay, now we can drop the rest of our bolts in. Throw the grease fitting in. This is the upper control arm flex joint, so they give you the option of either a 90-degree or straight on that one. I choose a straight because there is an access hole in the control arm mount that is easier to access if you have a straight zerk on there. The lowers, I like to put the 90-degree on. They'll just point the zerk down, and then you can just grease from the bottom. So we'll throw that in. And then, yeah, that's basically it for assembling the flex joint though. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the rest in off camera, and then we'll proceed to the next step. Okay, so now that we have let the paint dry, we got our flex joints installed, we're ready to install the Crossmember. So what we're going to do is take the outer long arm portions and just bolt them in loosely. That way we can get our transmission part where we want it before we tighten it all up. They give you 2 metric bolts per side and then 1 7/16 bolt for that hole we just tapped. Okay, now that that's loosely installed, we can go ahead and set our trans cross member in. If you were going to use the transfer case drop, you would put it right underneath here and use the longer carriage bolts that they have. But we're going to be using the shorter carriage bolts because we don't need the transfer case drop in this scenario. So in 2000 and 2001 Cherokees, this center transmission mount needs to be swapped out for the older style offset transmission mount to accommodate for Iron Rock's Crossmember. Okay, you can barely see it because this thing's so rusted, but there's a little dimple right here. You gotta grind that off so it'll accept the new transmission mount. I'll hit it with a shot of paint so it doesn't rust any further. Alright, you want to bolt this new mount up with the offset on the driver's side of the vehicle. Disregard that I already had the long arms in. I skipped a step and realized that I needed to do this because this Cherokee's an 01. It only applies to the automatic Cherokees 2000 to 2001 according to Iron Rock. There we go. So the trans mount they want you to put in is off by almost a little over a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch. And I'm not too sure why they want you to swap it on the 01, but I mean all their other ones, because I've never installed an automatic 0001 yet. My Jeep's an 01, but it's a manual. It dropped right in. So maybe something with that center mount they don't want you to use, but getting the offset mount lined up in this automatic 01 is not very fun. I feel sorry if the customer ever needs to do work on his Jeep. I'm trying to pry here without hurting anything. The dang unibody, it's just so thin I don't want to poke a hole in it. Alright, so I finally got it. I ended up taking this ratchet strap and pulling the cross member over this way while prying on the transfer case gently that way, and it finally dropped in. So now that that's in, we can get our 4 nuts on and continue with the rest of the setup. Just imagine the long arms aren't here yet. Now that the trans cross member is done, we're ready to take the control arms out and replace them with the new long arms. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this tire off on both sides, get all 4 control arms off, and then my least favorite part of the job is after that. Okay, so we have reached the hardest part of the whole long arm install, which it's just more time consuming and tedious work than anything, but you have to get this lower control arm out of the way because it is going to contact your new long arms if you don't. So there's several methods. You can cut it with a grinder and a cutoff wheel or a torch. In my case, I'm going to go the easy route and use a plasma cutter. It's still tedious work though. I'm going to go ahead and cut it all out and then probably drill out the spot welds so I can get the unibody nice and clean for when I'm putting the front stiffeners on later. So yeah, I'll cut this side for you guys on film. The other side I'll probably do off camera, and then all we got left to do is to throw the control arms and hardware in and make sure it's all tight, and we'll be good to go. I'm going to take a drill and drill out every single one of these spot welds. There's probably at least 20 of them. So, bear with me. Sorry about that, guys. So I got it off. Sorry, my phone ran out of storage, so I had to clear some space so I could keep filming for you. But I got it all off, got it cleaned up. It's pretty good enough to be able to weld stiffeners on. I didn't want to worry about this backside because that's really hard to get off. However, I think if you're not planning on doing stiffeners anytime soon, just the first portion without drilling the spot welds out would be totally fine. I mean, that's how I did it on my Jeep, but because of having to do stiffeners, this had to be done. But I'm gonna go ahead and knock out the driver's side off camera, then we'll stab the arms in. Well, like I said, guys, that is definitely the worst part of this entire job. The rest of it's pretty much a breeze. But I'm gonna have black boogers for probably a couple days now. But, all right, so like I said, we have the arms left to stab in. We're also gonna throw that flex joint in, and I think just torque it down and get in alignment, and we should be good to go. I'm gonna set it basically to the base settings that Iron Rock gives you to start with, and then the alignment shop should be able to figure it out as long as he takes it to a good alignment shop. Typically I do the alignments on my own stuff with a tape measure and an electronic angle finder, but I mean, anybody else I'd recommend, they probably just ought to get an alignment. To each their own, right? All right, before I get the flex joint in, Iron Rock does sell them for the stock size 10 mil bolt that would go in the upper control arm, or you can opt for a 1/2 inch bolt, and that's what he's done. So we need to take the upper control arm and drill it out for the 1/2 inch bolt, and then we can put the flex joint and our control arm back in. So there's different methods to getting the upper control arm bushing out. But my favorite way, and typically it's the fastest way, is to use an air hammer. So Iron Rock's install tool is pretty interesting. It makes it so you don't have to put a big bulky ball joint press on this. But you're gonna wanna take just the sleeve for the flex joint and set it in there. It's pretty tight. And then this washer goes in the flex joint. And you set this guy on the left side and a carriage bolt through it and through the washer. Like so, and then washer and nut. Now we just need to tighten that nut up and it should be good to go. Okay, so that flex joint is now in. It assembled just like the other three on the control arms. So just be cautious when you do assemble this one. you put a lot of grease in there because there is no Zerk to be able to grease it later. So you want to make sure that thing's nice and lubed. Installing the lower control arms, the flex joints need to be positioned like the photo on the right. If installed like the photo on the left, it is 180 degrees off and it will cause them to bind. Disconnecting the front drive shaft at the transfer case can help aid in installing the upper control arm. Now I'm going to install all the pinch bolts and nuts the Iron Arc provides in the kit to clamp the long arm to its joint. And we're just going to install them loosely for now. I like to torque these down with the weight of the vehicle on the suspension. That way the links are relaxed in the position that they want to be in. So now we can go ahead and torque all the ends with a flex joint. So both the lowers on the Crossmember side and the upper, and since we have a flex joint in the upper on the axle, we can torque that in the air also. Basically on any suspension setup, you want to be cautious. If you have a rubberized bushing, you want to torque that with the weight of the vehicle on the suspension. If you torque it in the air, you risk that suspension setting down and it actually tearing the rubber in the bushing. So just keep in mind, the lowers on the axle side we will torque on the ground. Everything else we can torque in the air, unless you of course have that stock rubber bushing in the upper still. Okay guys, I just want to, for reference, show you what this kit can do, because I don't think with this Jeep's shocks and the leaves are doing it justice. This is my Jeep. Now that Jeep's on 32s and I'd say probably 4.5 inch lift. I'm on about 8 inches of lift and 37s. Let's see how high we are to the fork. I'm gonna extend my... We are 39.5 inches, so about 11 inches more flex than that Jeep right now. So yeah, I mean, my Jeep flexes pretty dang good with their 3-link, and their rear 4-link complements it even more. So this is why I highly recommend this kit, guys, and it works amazing for if you want to do a 1-ton swap or Dana 44s. I mean, I'm running JK axles right now to speak JK axles right now anyways, so this kit runs great with any axles that you choose. So here's the rear 4-link if you guys haven't seen it yet. All right guys, well, I hope this video at least helped one of you. If it did, then I know I did my job. So this Iron Rock Link 3 link is about $1,000 for the upgrade right now. It's still really affordable. I mean, it's gone up a little bit with inflation, but everything's going up right now. Amazing kit though. If you guys want to ever see any footage of this kit in the works, I've got plenty of it on my channel. So let's go over one more time the reasons why you'd want this kit over short arms. Is for one is ride comfort. The short arms are so short, it's actually going to pivot your axle back, pivot downwards, and it actually causes an issue in suspension geometry that allows that suspension to basically ride like a brick. These long arms give that radius of the axle more up and down movement instead of pulling the axle in, which allows for a lot closer to stock ride. So anytime you lift a Jeep over 4.5 inches, I always think it's a good idea to do long arms. Guys have done 6.5 on short arms, and I just don't think they ride that nice. Also, like I said, the shocks are a limiting factor right now, but if you add better shocks and some suspension tuning into it, this thing can flex like mad, like crazy. So I hope this video helps you guys though, and if you want to see any of that footage, click right here and you can check it out right now.